I better be here next time, and he left. A cook told me he had seen that guy sleeping in his car in the parking lot that morning, and he had seen the same car parked in the lot several times when he left at night. He knows it was the same car because it was filled with trash. Steve came back in after last call and told me he wanted to place an order, but I said it was too late, so he went to the bathroom. I watched for him to leave and he never did. At this point, I have a panic attack building up. I tell the bartender/manager what's going on, and he and the bouncer find him standing on the toilet in the stall. They drag him out and tell him he can never come back. I told my boyfriend, so when he picked me up, he brought 2 friends, and I discreetly hid my face and disguised myself when I left, checking the mirrors to see if we were being followed. Steve never came back, and I ended up quitting shortly after anyway. Eventually, my boyfriend and I broke up, and I kept our apartment, and my sister had moved in. A few months later, things took a turn for the worst. I started dating my girlfriend, who was from a small town, and she wanted to take a weekend trip back home. When we got back, one of the window panes was busted in a multiple-pane window, and I asked my sister about it, and she hadn't noticed. She hadn't left the house all weekend, and she didn't hear glass breaking or anything suspicious. This did not feel like a break-in attempt, and the more we thought about it, the scarier it became. 1, we are dead broke. There's nothing you could get any money from inside. Trust me, I've tried. And it's evident no matter what window you look in from. Like I said, I think defense, so all the windows have blinds, but there are a few gaps in them from the cats. I've looked through these gaps multiple times to be completely aware of what can and cannot be seen. Also, I put long screws in all the window frames so they can't be opened more than 4 to 6 inches. 2, the window pane was pried out, not busted in, meaning they knew somebody was home and they didn't want to be heard. 3, it was the only night in over a year that I left town. I didn't put it on Facebook, and I only told a few good friends. Neither my sister nor I have cars, so you can't look in the driveway and see who's home. The next night, we heard the neighbors' dogs barking and growling, and we heard footsteps in the yard. I grabbed the gun, went to the living room next to the yard, and listened, thinking to myself, be smart. Is this 2 feet or 4? And the second I realized it was bipedal, I started flipping the lights on and off rhythmically to make the person think we were signaling our neighbor. That made them leave. Sign number 4. It wasn't a break-in attempt. You don't return to the house you failed to break into the day before. My sister and I got tasers and wasp spray. It's cheaper than pepper spray and sprays farther, because I don't have a CNC and my sister won't touch a gun. The rest of the week was quiet and my sister was now armed, so that weekend my girlfriend and I decided to go out. We got in a stupid fight that night, and when she dropped me off, I threw $20 in her car and said something snarky like, "Here's my half of the tab," and went inside. She noticed when she was a few blocks away and texted that she was going to come give it back, but I told her not to. She knocked, but I didn't answer because I was mad. I heard footsteps come up to my bedroom window, and I waited for her to knock on the window so I could yell that I told her not to come by, but she just walked off. She texted to say she tucked the 20 in the screen door, so I got up to grab it and there was nothing there. I told her it wasn't there and asked if it could have fallen out, and it wasn't possible. Then I asked why she walked to my window, and she said she hadn't. This meant whoever saw her leave the money had to be 50 feet or less from the door. It had only been 3 minutes tops from when she dropped it off to when I checked, and the only place it could have been was in our backyard. It also means whoever walked up to my window knew my girlfriend was there to see me and knew which room was mine. A week later, we heard footsteps in the yard again. I did the same routine, grabbed the gun, stood in the living room, and then started with the lights. Then I had an idea. This person needs to think they can be seen, so I started to flip the switch every time I heard a step. Once they noticed, they started running, so I ran to look out the peephole to see a big fellow with wild hair running down the alley. Even though I didn't get a great look, the general outline looked like Steve. So I started looking for the emails he gave me. Like I said, I'm always on high alert, and he raised concern. The second I noticed his full name was on the emails, I decided I was going to keep them. I got his last name and searched his public record, then I pulled up his most recent mugshot and asked my sister if she had seen the man before, and her face went ghost white. She said yes, he smelled like garbage, and that made her anxious too. He came into her job, Subway, a few times, but every time he came in, he asked her lots of questions. She said she will never forget the creepy, menacing smile he plastered on his face, the second she told him her name and the feeling of pure fear it gave her. She rides her bike to and from work, so I'm betting he followed her home. One thing became painfully clear. He didn't hurt my girlfriend when she left the money, and he didn't touch my sister when she rode her bike out. this was about me. The second she told me this, I called the cops. I gave them the emails and told them everything I knew, down to the name of the cook I knew that could describe his car. They found his car within a week, and it was abandoned by the lake, full of trash and a few personal belongings, and pages of his crazy thoughts or intentions. There were hundreds of pages about me and what he thought about me, my sister, and a checklist of all the subways he checked to find her, what he learned from her, the layout of her house, my girlfriend's info, and, the most screwed up, his very sexually charged plan to keep me alive while he cut me up and ate me. The plan was to break in, kill my sister, and wait for me to come home. Then he was going to cut off a piece of me a day and make me watch while he ate it, and masturbated. I had PTSD before this happened, and so did my sister, and this event made it so much worse for us. My sister can't work either now, and we are both in the disability process. I debated posting this for a long time. I don't like thinking or talking about it, and it gives me panic attacks sometimes. It has literally taken me 6 hours to write it all out, but I decided it's a story worth telling. I'll never get over it if I keep avoiding it, and maybe, hopefully, it will help save someone else's life, so be kind, please. I've worked hotel maintenance for 11 years, across 4 different properties. You see things in that job that would genuinely surprise most people. What guests do to rooms, what gets left behind, and what people think they can get away with inside a building they're only borrowing for 2 nights. I stopped being shocked by most of it a long time ago. I'm telling you that so you understand that what happened at the Aldrin last spring wasn't something I spooked easily into doing. I know what I saw and I know what it means, and I'm still not fully over it. It was a Tuesday night, close to 11 o'clock. I was doing a routine check on the 4th floor, HVAC unit, when the call came through my radio. Room 1312 reporting an issue with the bathroom. Calm voice, no urgency. Just a guest complaint routed through the system the way they always are. I radioed back to the front desk to confirm the ticket. There was a pause on the other end, longer than it should have been, and then Maya, our overnight desk clerk, asked me to repeat the room number. I said 1312. She told me to come to the desk. Found her standing back slightly from the computer with her arms crossed, looking at the screen like I had said something rude to her. She told me the Aldrin had 12 floors. I said I knew that. She pulled up the elevator panel diagram on her screen and pointed. Floors 1 through 12. Lobby, basement. No 13. She said the hotel had a 13th floor once, a long time ago before she worked there, before anyone currently on staff worked there. She said she didn't know exactly what happened though. Something in 1987. The floor got sealed and as far as she knew, nobody had been up there since. She said the call I received had to be a system glitch. I told her I was going to check the stairwell access anyway. She told me she'd rather I didn't go alone, and I told her I'd be 10 minutes. The 13th floor stairwell access was behind a utility door on 12 that I'd walked past probably 1,000 times without thinking about. The bolt on it was old, the kind that should have been completely seized with age and rust. It wasn't seized. It moved stiffly, but it moved, and when I put my shoulder into the door, it opened. The smell hit me first. Stale and close, like a room that hadn't seen fresh air in decades, but underneath, that's something else. Something lived in. The hallway was dark, and I used my flashlight. The carpet was the old kind, a pattern they stopped making in the 80s, thick with dust. Wallpaper peeling off in long strips. All the room doors closed. It looked exactly like it was supposed to be. An abandoned floor, untouched since Reagan was president. Except for the path. Down the center of the hallway, through the dust on the carpet, the path had been worn. Not a single trip, repeated walking, back and forth over a long period of time. It led straight down the hall to the last door on the right, room 1312. The door was slightly open with a thin line of pale light coming from inside. I stood in the hallway for a moment and listened. Nothing. I pushed the door open. Somebody had been living there. A bedroll on the floor beside the bed. Stacked cans of food on the desk. A duffel bag half open with clothes inside. A battery-powered lantern still warm to the touch. A layer of grime on everything except the areas that had been recently used. The desk, a cleared section on the floor, and the bathroom doorway. I went to the bathroom. The mirror above the sink had some names written on it. Floor to ceiling, edge to edge, written in something dark and rust-colored that I knew immediately wasn't marker. Some of the names near the top were old and faded to almost nothing. Others lower down there were darker, more recent. There were more names on that mirror than I could count standing there. I was still reading them when I heard the stairwell door at the end of the hall open. I turned off my flashlight. I stood completely still in the bathroom doorway, listening to slow, unhurried footsteps move down the hallway toward the room. They stopped just outside the door. I could hear breathing on the other side of the wall, steady and calm, like somebody who had no idea I was there or didn't care. Then the footsteps moved away, back down the hall. The stairwell door opened and closed. I gave it 2 full minutes before I moved. On my way out, I swept my flashlight under the bed and stopped. There was a wooden box, the kind you'd keep documents in. I pulled it out and opened it. Keycards, dozens of them, stacked and loose, all deactivated, all with room numbers written on them in black marker. Different numbers, different floors, spanning what looked like many years based on different card designs and formats from different eras of the hotel's history. Underneath the key cards were photographs, printed, standard size, bundled in loose stacks. I flipped through them with my flashlight. Guests, taken without their knowledge through windows and cracked doors and in hallways, hundreds of them going back what looked like years. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the bottom of the box, where a single stack was rubber banded separately from the rest. All the same woman, taken over what looked like multiple visits, different seasons based on her clothing. The early photos were taken from a distance. They progressed. The last one in the stack was taken inside a hotel room. Low light, with a woman asleep in bed, taken from close enough that I could see the detail of her face clearly. I recognized her. Not personally, but from a news story I'd seen a couple years back. A woman who had stayed in the Aldrin for a work conference in 2019 and never checked out. They found her 3 miles away. The case was still unsolved as far as I knew. I called 911 from the stairwell and waited on the 12th until they arrived. They swept the floor and found the room empty. Whoever had been in that hallway was gone, and whatever access point that used to come and go was something. Investigators are apparently still trying to locate inside the building structure. The box was taken as evidence. The mirror was photographed and documented. The detective assigned to the case called me the following morning with a question. She asked if I had written anything on the mirror myself or touched it in any way. I said no and asked why. She paused and then told me there was a name at the very bottom of the mirror, written smaller than the others, below everything else like it had been added last. It was my name, and underneath it my work schedule for the current week, written out day by day. I haven't been back to the Aldrin since. I don't know how long that floor was being used or how many of those names mean what I think they mean. The investigation is ongoing, and I've been told not to discuss specifics, which is part of why I've kept this vague.